GOPR0180 and Beyond Canada, a therapist with the Kitchener Downtown Community Health Center, and an anti-human trafficking advocate, fresh from a medical mission to Guyana. Please welcome Lori Butler.
48 hours ago, I stepped off a plane, completing a 10-day medical mission to Guyana. I was almost elated to use this as my first excuse and only excuse in response to Jennifer King's invitation for me to speak in front of the largest crowd I've ever presented. Then I realized I'd be back in time, just under the wire of jet lag, but certainly coherent enough to read my prepared notes. Why elation? Because public speaking is my #1 fear in life. Not cliff jumping, not hiking in the Himalayas, not flying in a putter plane over Mount Everest, not floating in a tin boat over hippo-infested waters in Africa when a motor ran out and the boat had to be towed by a rope, not getting lost in the streets of New Delhi alone, not cycling with 18 others on death-defying roads in Vietnam, nor taking a 4-hour road trip to Nepal and realizing only after the fact that the roads are considered to be the most dangerous in the world. That list I've accomplished with a steady hand and a resting pulse rate. The true reason I said yes to Jennifer's invitation to speak tonight was because in the few days I had to marinate in the fear of the pending decision, all the excuses I was going to give, or the reasons I might consider having something to contribute, I had a flashback. I remembered standing beside a single mother at 5 a.m. while we huddled close to stay warm and wait for the gun to go off to begin our 26.4 marathon in St. George, Utah. As we stood together, I asked her, what inspired you to do a marathon? She went on to tell me about a friend that died of cancer and how she wanted to show her own kids to live life to the fullest and to always believe you can do what you set your mind to. She said that's what got me started, but the better question, though, is what kept me training. Pausing briefly, she then carefully and reverently pulled out a small and unassuming stone out of her pocket. She said, it was this rock. My 13-year-old daughter gave it to me on my 20-mile training day, and I asked her what it meant. She replied, it's because you do hard things. I have never forgotten the woman I stood beside as we were about to embark on a feat we both were not assured of finishing, and I have never forgot her poignant phrase and symbolic rock. What I had momentarily lost sight of in my weekend of marinating in fear over the decision to speak tonight is I too do hard things. And I believe the act of doing hard things without knowing the outcome is where the potentiality of changing the world exists. It's how this single mother training for a marathon, not necessarily finishing, changed the character of her children's perspective and the potential trajectory of what they too believe for their future. For the last 14 years in my career as a therapist, I have estimated I've heard the stories of around 1,000 people from all walks of life, from the incarcerated, displaced, homeless, impoverished, addicted, fostered, psychotic, traumatized, privileged, abused, tortured. Each story could be woven together with one common thread. They too do hard things to create and transform their own lives and the lives of others. I would like to invite you all on a journey of one of those stories. To do so, I invite you to close your eyes in this moment. I want you to imagine you are an 8-year-old boy. You were born in Iran during the time of a major Islamic revolution, resulting in the exile of many Iranians. You were born into a culture that teaches aggressiveness, brutality, and violence, and that believing anything else would be counterculture and cementing a target on your back. Your family of 12 lived simple lives in the mountainous area of Dahalo, and even at the tender age of 8, you have already learned to be a shepherder, staying outside alone for days, caring for sheep, warding off threats of wolves and thieves.
Your parents bravely choose to live a life counterculture, free to make independent decisions about religious preferences and political identity. One day your brother and father do not come home. You soon find out that they have been brutally executed because they were not Muslims and were not affiliated with the Islamic militants of the time. Suddenly you are caught in a tornado of fear and desperation for your life and family. At the same time you are contemplating fleeing, you learn that another brother who has been in prison for the same reason your father and brother were executed has been spared by escaping through a small window in his jail cell and fled to Iraq. You, as a young boy, are instructed to grab only what you can carry on your back, necessary for a journey unknown. You start on a dirt mountain path, no map, no direction, filled with grief, desperation, terror, walking through the same mountain terrain you previously slept while protecting your sheep. Now you are sleeping with your mother, siblings, and 20 other families choosing to flee, protecting them from more than just wolves and thieves. You are now hiding in caves and in trees during the day, only walking at night as airplanes with bombs circle in daylight. As you walk in the darkness, you pass dead bodies, as there is only one path to follow. As you walk, you survive by the safety of numbers you travel in, having only one family member walk first ahead, ensuring it's safe to proceed, and then coming back for you and others to then follow at a snail's pace. You walk and walk and walk for 3 months to reach the Iraqi border, scared, hesitant to cross over, always hoping of news that it might be safe to return back home. As you cross over the Iraqi-Iranian border into the tented refugee camp, you are now just another family amongst the 200,000 others you see. A tented community who will also find out your family is counterculture and treat you as the enemy, outcast, and will ostracize and intimidate you on a constant basis. Now imagine, as a family, standing in a long line at Red Cross and eventually the United Nations of High Commissions for Refugees, hoping your story, your plight, is chosen worthy to be sent to an unknown country to find respite and freedom. Imagine your emotions, your hope, your fear being interviewed, and your careful words in saying all the right things. Now imagine you stand in that same line with the same hope and desperation, being denied entry every year for 22 years of your life. Imagine spending your formative life in a refugee camp, as you will be 30 years old when you leave. Imagine never knowing if you were going to eat regularly for 22 years. Imagine sharing everything you own with others for 22 years. Imagine being threatened and witnessing death for those 22 years. Imagine teaching yourself how to read and write with one book shared amongst the entire refugee camp for 22 years. Imagine what hopes and dreams you might have for those 22 years. Imagine how a community of people that have nothing combine resources to share and inspire and skills and beauty to those that have never seen art before. Now imagine the pride and joy you have teaching yourself to read and write, and now teaching others to paint and draw and imagine a world outside of their own. Imagine that learning to draw has no boundaries or barriers into being educated. Imagine that drawing, sculpting, and painting is your only way of expressing your pain, oppression of a people, your torture, and the voice of the forgotten. And now imagine one day going back to the same UNHCR line, fighting for how many times your file has disappeared, or been forgotten, or sabotaged. And then the act of kindness of one Italian UNHCR officer on her last day of work who accepts your file to be sent to Canada. Your hope for 22 years to be the one of 0.1% that would be accepted to a new country has actually come true. And as you open your eyes, realize that life story you've just imagined is true. His name is Aziz Yousefi, and he lives, works, and volunteers in our KW community as an art teacher and activist. Aziz is also in this room tonight. And and it is my joy to introduce him. Aziz, would you please stand? I was gifted to share Aziz's story with you, and his, along with the other 1,000 stories I've had the honor of holding and empowering, represents all of our humanity and our amazing, beyond all obstacles, ability to do hard things. And to keep on doing hard things, never knowing the outcome, but hoping for the impossible. Hope is the oxygen that powers your ability to do hard things, your ability and potential to change the world. Thank you for listening. And as you leave tonight, please stop by the back table to pick up a rock to place in your pocket, remembering you too do hard things.
Thank you, Lori. The next speaker